Hey everybody, in this video we're going to look at the second part of the Clapham vs Lofota European Final of 2021.
Mikhail with another fantastic pull. I've been on the receiving end of them earlier this season and it's not where you want to be.
If he wants to put his body on the line, we'll put it on the internet.
The secondary handler is hit and downfield Lofota immediately cross over and cause another pick. Clapham are tight 1-1 and there's a moment here where Hillman could switch effectively, but his teammate doesn't cover the alternative option, so instead of a switch it's a legitimate pick. This is the fifth crossover error by Lofota that has resulted in a pick call. Lofota are still at the back of their end zone when there's another miscommunication on an undercut covered by Andy Lewis. Quick thinking from Lewis and Mikhail punishes Lofota immediately.
And a miscommunication downfield, and you can't give Clapham opportunities like that because they'll take anything.
McNeil marks Angela's well-timed deep cut, and as he pulls out of it, we see Lofota's third miscommunication turnover of the game. Lofota's O-line defense is heads up. There's a loose bracket and a switch in the backfield which causes confusion, and then a second switch onto a deep cut, which leaves Funk with no real options on stall 9 and he's forced to put up a speculative shot. There's a call on the receiving end. Slaughter could be arguing that the defender couldn't make the play without there also being contact, but after some discussion and consideration retracts the call, which is probably the right outcome. Laffy gets free up line for another killer around break. Clapham defenders scramble to cover the near corner, and Laffy doesn't hesitate to put out a crossfield shot away from the defense to the far corner of the end zone.
Again, that communication on the defense, but it isn't enough. Fantastic blade all the way over to the opposite side and taken in by Angela.
Clapham begin the point with one of their players behind the disc, and their defender is poaching behind the force. Ford and Yo are clustered on the near side, with their defenders sticking firmly to their one-to-one tethers and not looking to help out elsewhere or help each other. Briggs clears a massive space in front of the disc, and Gordon beats his mark there. The poach misses an opportunity for a block. Gordon catches and hard focuses downfield. Briggs' defender stays tight, and after a fake, Gordon directs his focus to Wilson. Wilson struggles to get free, eventually using the space cleared by Ford.
And he does in the scenario. Josh Briggs going deep straight away.
Gordon doesn't travel after catching, and his initial balance is good. His feet are pointing towards an area which is seeing a lot of movement from teammates, with Yo running through and separation on players in the backfield. Without changing the position of his feet, Gordon could throw a flick forwards or a backhand backwards in any infield direction. The mistake here is that he continues to hard focus on Briggs after the initial look and puts energy into a pivot and fake when he knows he's not going to throw the disc. If this pass was made and they were both looking to move the disc quickly, then it would have opened the field up with flow and avoided the high stall count. Instead, Gordon makes the same mistake as he did a few seconds ago. He hard focuses directly downfield on the next cutter, Wilson, who is covered under, and then commits to an outward pivot without cashing in on it. The pivot does buy Gordon some space as his mark commits to it, but it's out of sync with Wilson, and when he comes back he's not balanced and ready to throw quickly to the alternative option in the same channel, in this case offered by Ford. The most appropriate throw would be a short, no pivot lefty backhand. He glances backwards, but Briggs is marked up again by now, and 7.9 seconds after catching, probably on stall 9, he releases the disc to Wilson. This is how Gordon has trained and what he's used to working. If an offense can set up situations every 3 seconds where they have an isolated one-to-one in the space in front of the disc, you should be able to focus on that space, that cut, and pivot hard and advance the disc, or at a minimum hit a one-to-one reset on a high stall. This works fine when you are physically outmatching teams playing hard one-to-one. Gordon's win rate across all games he's ever played in is very high, so he's used to his teammates winning their one-to-one matchups, but in the small percentage of games where the defenders are consistently challenging you one-to-one in such spaces, which are also the most important games, then more fluidity, versatility and dynamism is needed to make use of the small windows as they open. In other words, against good defense where isolated players are often covered, the limited options of this type of offense can cause it to struggle. Yo passes back to Briggs and continues to offer disc-moving options whilst Briggs is hard focusing downfield. Briggs wants to break the force into the wide open space, but Gordon's cut is a pick and stops the play. Briggs hits the scuba again, this time to Wilson, and then comes the O-line's second turnover of the game.
Apparently it opens it up for the break scuba. as that one is thrown through traffic.
There are a few elements to this turnover. The poach from Tonyetti is effective, the throw leads Briggs into the poach, it bounces off Briggs' hands, and Wilson's balance control brings him out of sync with his teammates. Similar to the first turnover, where Wilson fakes a throw and then releases a similar throw a fraction of a second later, now Wilson pivots once and then again a fraction of a second later for a similar throw. This often results in a turnover when any player does this, whether it's the mechanics being disrupted or miscommunication with his teammates. Smoother balance control and a slow step would have increased the percentage on this throw.
Another factor is that the early pivot shows the throw to the poach, which makes them more committed to stopping that throw.
Lofota wastes no time picking the disc up and getting it moving, no player spending more than a couple of seconds looking downfield. Wilson not quite being given the opportunity to earn the disc back before Tonyetti goes for the hammer and it's out of reach.
And he goes for the hammer, flash or function. Failure.
Before we look at what Tonyetti saw, let's see what Clapham's O-line defense did during the fast break.
Now let's have a look at what Tonyetti saw. The obvious continuation is being pressured by Gordon and has also been seen by Ford, who takes a step in. His mark makes the appropriate move in the opposite direction, but despite the separation, Ford doesn't show urgency, probably because he senses help may come from Meade or from Wilson. Wilson isn't aware of the potential poach bracket, and Ford doesn't communicate, but the cutter doesn't attack the back corner, which is what Tonyetti is looking for. Although this could have been a break for Lofota due to the lack of defensive help and lack of communication, it's a turn due to the offensive miscommunication stemming from a crossover. The Clapham O-line once again create a large open space downfield of the disc and isolate a 1-to-1 matchup, Yo versus Sebastian Rossi, and Rossi gets an awesome layout D. Rossi knows when he's on stage and he shows great athleticism to match the movements of Yo early and then launch himself at the disc. Briggs' fake is unrealistic, and it has the purpose of communicating with Yo to bring him under.
And he can hit end zone to end zone from here.
An unrealistic fake doesn't convince any downfield defenders or move his mark, but does this really matter? The best defenders pick up information from all around them as they play. Yo sacrifices a few inches to try to make the catch safer. He could have gone for the high-speed crab catch, but it is a riskier catch compared to clap catching. And at this point the offense are in a tough situation which they could have avoided earlier. The auto fake, the predictability of the cut, the risky decision, and then the most athletic D in Europe. After the D, Ford is expecting a switch with Wilson that doesn't happen, and then they find themselves surrounded by the offense, which is the opposite of the situation they want to be in. Something strange happens in the stack as Amala and Meade cross paths, and Meade physically moves him out of the way. This is the second time they've come together at this point, and technically it's against the rules to physically assist the movement of a teammate, but the intention is to avoid a pick or a switch, and they don't look like they're switching anytime soon. Mastriani and Gordon come together, and Gordon calls a push-off foul. It looks as though Gordon initiates contact by reaching an arm out, and then Mastriani continues and increases the contact. Whoever initiates the contact is the one committing the foul. Hands-on one-to-one defense is against the rules, and I would argue that it's not even very good. If you think this is a one-off, Gordon just protecting from contact, then I can point to two more examples that happen on the screen at the exact same time. First, after getting past Armala, Meade initiates contact with his mark whilst he checks in with the disc. Second, Briggs chooses to accelerate into the side of his mark and reach out an arm. Many players, particularly in North America, like to play with this level of contact, and it is the norm in certain circles. Calling it touching defense or a bit of jostling is generally accepted if both players are happy, and only called if they think it crosses the line. The question is, where do you draw the line? Allowing for any level of intentional contact makes everything far more subjective and opens up a big grey area. In my opinion, training hands-on defense is counterproductive because it's against the rules and the other team can choose at any moment to shut down the tactic by making legitimate foul calls. They are under no obligation to tolerate the rules being broken, so the tactic can only be employed if the other team allows it. Instead of preparing for the rules to be broken, we should be putting training time into developing defenders' awareness so they know where the disc is and their mark is without touching them, and have help from their teammates when it's appropriate. Lofota score immediately after the stoppage. All of the Clapham defenders are matching up one-to-one in identical ways, meaning none of them, except Ford, are positioned to guard a lead pass to the break side space.
See a nice standard vertical stack. They try and go back to the fundamentals, the basics, the necessities.
Who initiates the contact here? It seems fairly mutual. Is the arm and foot movement too much? Who's to say? Did the contact help the defense at all? Is this the most effective way for a team to play defense against a tight vertical stack? I don't think that it is. It's time downfield defenders started working together and surrounding stacks to protect against good break throws and good ISO cutters, and avoid all covering the same space. If this suggestion makes sense to you and you want your team to start playing like this, then you just have to start practicing surrounding in these types of situations. You can recreate stacks with drills and exercises, including these 3 tried and tested methods, which are linked in the description. A quick message for patrons: everybody can now access the deleted scenes video, which has some of my more controversial takes from this game, and those on the training tier message us on Discord or through Patreon, and I'll send you a free pink and purple disc. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for part 3.